York Jets first-round selection, fullback, Roger Vick, Texas A&M.
Alrighty, episode 6 of Splittin Uprights coming at you. Boys are here, ready to go, coming off of a great weekend. And Drew's going to get us started today with a stat of the day. Drew, what do you got for us?
We had a whole discussion last week with Gage about the Cowboys. Interesting stat little here, talking about Dak. So in 2017, this is the most dropped interceptions. Jameis Winston was at 27, Dak Prescott, 24. In 2018, Jameis Winston was 23, Dak Prescott was 17. So all I'm saying is, do you think that means there was 17 opportunities in 2018 for dropped interceptions, and that means there was 24 times for Dak Prescott? Do you think that man is worth $40 million? That's all I got to say. That's my stat of the day.
Dude, Jameis Winston threw how many picks last year, but he threw how many dropped picks?
This was in 2017 and then 2018. So this is a couple years back, but still, I mean,
he had 30 interceptions.
but the year before, he had 23 dropped picks.
23 drop picks, and then 27 the year before, and then Dak, and he was the league leader, and Dak was second. All I'm saying is that's not a $40 million quarterback right there.
And everyone was talking about how Dak threw the least picks whenever he was a rookie. He only threw 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like, Dak's too efficient. Dak's too this. Man, get the fuck out of here. Dak ain't that.
Dude, why didn't we bring that up in the Cowboys episode, man? Pookie, I was one of those. I was always mentioning his touchdown to interception ratio and how clean it was. Just come to find out that man's lucky as hell.
Just an overlooked stat, man. Dropped interceptions is an overlooked stat.
No idea. If you had told me who was second in that category.
And also the source of that is Pro Football Focus. So it's not just like
where we get all of our stats.
Exactly. So it's a good source. It's not one of those, stupid ones.
No, sir. So we're going to introduce a new segment for the show. We're going to do best and worst of the weekend. Best thing we saw, the worst thing we saw or heard. Drew, we're going to start with you. Best and worst of the weekend.
So my best, I think, came from actually like the end of the week last week, but it's the news of NBA coming back. I personally, I don't really start watching the NBA until the playoffs start. So for me, I think they're going to play like 8 regular season games for seeding purposes, and also kind of get people to get their feet underneath them again, be conditioned, and then they're going to play like a 22-team playoff. But I think it's one of those things where it's live sports again. It's not coming back till like July 31st. So, I mean, we're still ways away from it, but it's a step in the right direction, during this whole Corona thing. My worst is that it's been, I want to say like two weeks or like a week and a half now, that freaking season 4 of Call of Duty Warzone has not come out yet. What the hell, man? I've been waiting for this. I want the new season. I've been addicted. I've already leveled up, got all my characters all maxed out, and I'm ready to move on, and they're just holding it. So that's my best and worst this weekend.
Welcome to adult life, Drew. I don't know how you're going to survive without video games.
Hell no.
All right, so my best of the weekend, one of my best friends, Andy Reid, he was a teammate of mine at Hendricks. We got here the year after Drew left. He got married over the weekend, had a good time. So I was best man, and I did not fumble the speech, thankfully. I got through it okay. My heart was racing like a game-winning kick. But no fumbled bags this time. They had a cute little idea where they had a date idea. So every guest at the wedding was supposed to submit an idea for them to go on a date, following the honeymoon. And one of those date ideas he told me just before the show happened to be go for a hike, get in the river, and have sex. And none of the people I was at the wedding with, like people our age, submitted that, which means, and it was really just a bunch of parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles. So someone out there is a horny bastard, all right? I don't know who it is, but hey, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying don't get caught, right? Or you're going to end up on Pornhub. So.
But I would like to see what Andy would look like on Pornhub, having sex forever like a wildebeest. A wild wildebeest.
In this day and age, dude, if you have a sex tape on your phone, it's getting hacked. Right? It's getting hacked.
The NSA.
That's right, man.
Don't commit terrorism, otherwise your sex tape will end up on the internet.
That's true. It's like the fappening all over again. Kind of like how these high schoolers are getting exposed for their racist tweets. It's like the fappening too. I know Pookie loves the fappening.
You could say that I'm familiar with it.
So I've got a little half and half, best and worst too. They go together. My worst over the weekend was the president getting involved yet again in the NFL. Dude, fuck out of here with that stuff, dude. No one, stop getting in our game. If you're okay with the players kneeling, great. If you don't want them to kneel, great. I don't care. Just don't get politics in the I don't know, dude. But the thing I always say the most is, if you really are going to turn away from a football game because people are kneeling for the flag, you're not a fucking football fan, dude. Get the fuck out of here with that stuff. That pisses me off so much. I mean, listen, you'll never know my political beliefs. It's not worth mentioning. Just, man, get the fuck out of here. I hate when he does that shit. He's got a lot of other things to be worrying about right now. But the best out of that is Drew Brees coming back, clapping cheeks, double birds to the president when he said, hey, I like what Drew Brees said, but he should not have taken back his apology. And Brees gave him two of these bad boys right here and said, fuck off. He said, it's not about the flag. It's about something bigger than that. So happy for Drew Brees, and it looks like the Saints are starting to mend relations there a little bit. Hopefully it works out for him okay. Seems like it's a better situation in New Orleans now than it was a week ago when I was seriously considering Drew Brees ending up with New England, and I had a little conspiracy theory going on there, but seems like all is well down in the Big Easy for now. Pookie, finally, your best and worst.
So my best of the weekend, I actually got in contact with a photography company that is interested in me having an interview with them to do some work for kids in school. I think it's like K through 12, so it's like a traveling position around the state. I'm not sure if I'm gonna like go forward with it, but it's definitely something good that happened to me. If you don't know me, I love photography and making videos, so it's an interesting tidbit for me to share with y'all.
I got two things for you, Pookie, real quick before you move on. One, are you allowed near a school?
Well, I'm gonna have to check with my parole officer, and then they're gonna have to call the state, the mayor, and it's gonna be a whole chain reaction going on before I can get in the school. But I'm sure that they'll drop my my record for them.
Number two, I'm familiar with your work. You are a great photographer and videographer. But my question is, will this be the first time that you videoed someone with their clothes on?
Well, they didn't say anything about the kids having to have their clothes on. I mean, you know, I don't know if I can arrange that if we're doing boudoir or what, but we'll have to see. I don't know if the principal will be down with that, but I'll have to ask.
What about your worst?
My worst of the weekend, so it's kind of two things. The first is the Minneapolis Police Department. The city council is in talks of actually disbanding it for public-led safety. And I'm not saying that that's the worst thing necessarily because I disagree with it, but I do think that it's worth mentioning in this sort of political climate that we're in nowadays, that, you know, it needs to be talked about and discussed how we can really replace security and do things that are more community-based. And also I saw a tweet from Donald Trump, sort of like what Sandy was talking about. He was basically instigating a conspiracy for this Buffalo man that got pushed down by police officers. And he was trying to say that it was staged. And I'm just like, dude, what the fuck? You don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, why would you say some shit like that? What are you trying to do? What do you stand to gain from that? It just pissed me off. So I'm kind of going to let that lead into our bigger discussion for the day about some of these circumstances that we're in. Sandy, what are your thoughts?
So I mentioned Drew Brees, and however you feel about it, I would say, and it almost seems like a cop-out answer nowadays, but the reality is that we're three white males. So how we would respond to what Drew Brees said, it depends on what side of the aisle you're on. May depend on how you react. If you're a moderate, it may depend on how you react, but also just who you are and how you react. Like, as far as the intentions of kneeling for the flag, what it does, is it disrespectful or not? Like, it's different for everybody. So my only thing with people going out there and saying these things is it's different for everybody, and we just don't know how others see it. And the best thing we can do is listen, is learn. That's the whole point of conversation, because we simply don't know. Like, I don't know about the struggles that, like, Pookie, you and I went to, we were at a school that was where the minority was really like the majority, especially on the football team. And my home life is significantly different than my teammates, a lot of them. And I just couldn't begin to understand what that's like. I saw it, but I don't understand. So in that sense, just reacting to Drew Brees, I hope that they've mended fences, and I hope that I hope Drew's being legitimate when he says it. Not you, Drew, but Drew Brees. And that they're able to mend relations there, because let's not forget, J.J. Watt has done an extraordinary amount of charitable work and has donated so much of his time and effort into the city of Houston. But Drew Brees, like, that man is an integral part of that city. What he's done, what he's given back to New Orleans, after Katrina, he and his family donated $5 million to hurricane relief. This man cares, and I just hope that, this will be a moment where, like, the people haven't given up on Drew Brees, because I think he's an extraordinary individual who said something that hopefully he can come back from, and that people will forgive him for, and we can move on. That's my thoughts on that as far as the protest. I know, Pookie, you've got pretty strong thoughts on a lot of it.
Yeah, I do have strong thoughts, and I'm really conflicted with, like, my own position in the society in relation to what's going on with the protest now at this time, because I do want to, like, give credence to these people and validate what they're trying to fight for. I think it's admirable, and we should all be doing our part. You don't necessarily have to go out and protest. You don't even have to post on social media, but whatever it is that you can do that's worth it for the cause, I think that that's worth it, even if it's the most minute things, conversations with people. If whatever it is that you want to do, your voice should be heard. I personally feel very strongly about the need for police reform, and I'm not necessarily sure how to go with that, but I do know that there needs to be changes made, and I can acknowledge that as a white person.
Mm-hmm. Drew, you wanted to bring up something specifically with the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL, a lot of 4 years ago, this really started with Kaepernick. The whole kneeling, he went out and asked a veteran, what he should do, because he didn't want to put his hand over his heart or stand or, do something. So it really started then. And for being honest, the NFL hasn't really handled this whole situation since then very well. They've been kind of, let's brush it off. Let's keep pushing it to the back so that we don't have to, worry about it. And it wasn't until this players video with, some of the big names in the NFL, but, really the face of the NFL right now, Pat Mahomes, came out. Apparently an NFL exec said that the league moved quickly to have a response, because of Mahomes being in this video. And I think it was all of those players, but whenever you take someone, if LeBron James is very active in the NBA, so he's the face of the NBA, for most people. So Adam Silver is out there, talking, giving response. And I think that's the type of person Adam Silver was. And I think that's the person that the commissioner before him was as well. So I think they're really big on that. But Roger Goodell is very, we're going to keep everything just football related, when, athletes nowadays and even celebrities, they have some of the biggest voices in the entire United States. So they have a bigger platform than a lot of other people. and they need to use that platform to talk. And I think I think this whole situation has looked really bad on Goodell and some of the top NFL execs, because that players video wasn't just done by the players. It was done by a rogue NFL employee reaching out to players wanting to make this video because he thought that there needed to be a message heard from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll bring up something in a minute that I heard along those lines, but that might actually change your mind a little bit about the NFL's response. As far as the NBA goes, I think Adam Silver is probably the most beloved commissioner in his own sport. I can't think of a tighter bond that I've known of in a professional league that I've followed than the one that's between players and Adam Silver. Like they trust him. There's a really strong relationship there. That's like a total 180 from what you've got going on in Major League Baseball right now. But that's neither here nor there. We can get into that later. But with the NBA, so here's the thing. The NBA is probably the second most popular sport in the United States, the second most popular league. But even then, it's like there's a particular demographic in the United States, demographics, not just one demographic, but that follows the NBA. And it's mainly a younger generation and a more progressive leaning, not as entirely conservative demographic that follows the NBA. With the NFL, now that's a whole different ballgame. And and I'm not excusing the NFL, but I'm trying to get behind maybe why they've reacted or not reacted in the way that they have, is that you have a few more bridges to burn if you're the NFL, because the Cowboys are in Texas. Protesting in Dallas is different than protesting in Seattle. Two totally different parts of the country. It's just different doing it in the NFL. That being said, Drew, if this makes you feel any better, the owners did not know about this video going out. They did not approve it. And, they obviously have control over their own teams. And everyone's like, I hate Roger Goodell. He did this, he did that. Well, Roger Goodell, ladies and gentlemen, does not run the NFL. The owners do. He doesn't run the owners. The owners run him. He's the mouthpiece. He does what they say. More specifically, he does what Jerry Jones says. Jerry Jones runs that league and a few other owners here and there. Robert Kraft probably being one of them. All right. But he's busy running it from a small shop in a outlet mall in Florida, and Jerry's running it off his yacht. So, but the owners didn't know anything about this video. And to me, if the NFL had said, hey, we're going to put out this video, I don't know how many owners necessarily – to me, they were bypassing the owners. They didn't want to take a chance on the owners saying no, specifically Jerry Jones of sorts. And the statement that Goodell puts out to me is a total the league itself hands-off approach this year on kneeling. I fully expect teams to kneel. You'll see tons of white players kneel. A ton of the only ones I can think of that wouldn't kneel would be like J.J. Watt. But J.J. Watt I believe he will support his teammates. He'll be right there with the hand that's not over his heart on a teammate's shoulder who is kneeling. Brady will not kneel. There are a few other players, but Brees, I bet Brees is right there linking arms with people, in that. So they may not kneel, but I totally expect the NFL to look different this season in terms of the anthem. And you're right, Drew. They haven't reacted to this in the past the way that most people would want them to. But they see the need now in society, the cultural shifts that we're seeing now, unfortunately, that have arisen from what happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Aubrey.
Many others, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, it's not just those three, but it's like this time is different. In our generation, we remember like Trayvon Martin. That one's the first one that I can vividly remember as a kid growing up. Eric Garner, Michael Brown were the two others that really stuck out because they got a lot of media attention. But this one just created a tidal wave, and I don't see it going away. And the NFL now says this isn't going away, and we can be the agent of change here. And I think you're going to see them getting on board. It's just going to be interesting to see how Jerry Jones and some of those more conservative owners will approach this. Whereas you got guys in like the Carolina owner, David Tepper, who seems to me to be pretty progressive. Seattle. I mean, you know that. I mean, San Francisco and a lot of those places, the fan bases will be all in, I would imagine. So I'm very curious to see how that works out. But I think the NFL certainly reacted rather than got ahead of it. But I do believe they're genuine in that response. So that was a long-winded response to what you said, Drew. But I think there's reason to be excited for how the NFL is going to approach this moving forward. So that's all I've got on that one.
I mean, yeah, I think as it comes from I think, like I said, with the NBA, there's less players to deal with. Football is the main moneymaker, so you're talking about millions of dollars. You know, whenever in 2016,
billions, baby,
billions.
Billions.
In 2016, when people were kneeling, you know, season ticket owners were ripping their tickets up, throwing them in the trash can, and everything like that. And I do agree. I think this time is different than any other time in history. I mean, I live in Coppell, Texas, or that's where I was from. That's where I spent most of my life. And, you know, in the past when, you know, this was getting media coverage or whatever like that, there was no protest. No one batted an eye. It was daily life here. This past weekend, we had a protest around our city. We had a prayer on last Thursday night. So it's definitely – and then there's another neighboring town, South Lake. We're both predominantly white, you know, areas with a lot of rich white people, and they were having protests as well. So I think it's impacted more than just you know, the rural or the areas of poverty where it's mainly Black people or, you know, mainly, you know, other colored people, for instance. So I think for us, this is definitely, I think for the entire United States, this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Well, for our Arkansas listeners, I mean, Pookie, if you know Arkansas, then you know how big of a deal it is for us to have had two protests, one in Cabot, which is right up the road from us, and the biggest rival in football, and then in Harrison, of all places. Like, that's a huge deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for that to come out, that really shows the societal shift that's taking place. I had one person that I was talking to call it almost like a revolution. And at first, I was kind of skeptical about that sort of language or to acknowledge it as that. But as I've continued to watch and continue to think, continue to reflect, I would almost acknowledge it as its own sort of huge movement. And I think that for a place like Harrison, where you got the KKK running rampant, for there to be a protest there, that's a huge deal. It shouldn't be taken lightly. So that really shows that it's affected the hearts of many people beyond what they are surrounded by. And I think that that's the important thing here.
So my sophomore year of high school, we were playing a team called Mountain Home who had no business being in our – it had to do with some stupid redistricting that was in our state. I mean, we smoked the Pookie's junior year, we sent Mountain Home packing at halftime. We were winning 42-0, and they called it because of storms. But that's how bad they are. It's not their fault. They only had like 23 players. But Mountain Home is right next to Harrison, and Harrison is like a de facto KKK base. Like, it's really where they operate out of, most of it, in the hills of Missouri, in the Ozarks. But when we were going there, the bus I was riding on was the starting offensive bus, and on offense we had like maybe 2 to 3 white dudes, honestly. So it was a bunch of black guys, black players, and they were joking about going to Mountain Home. You know, it's like, oh my God, like if we get pulled over on the side of the road, it's gonna be scary and all this and that. And going to the stadium, like they were joking about how weird it's gonna be. And the years later, I kept thinking about that bus ride, thinking they were joking, but they also weren't joking. But now that we see that this sense of we still have so much racism in this country, I can see that was actually pretty troubling for them going to Mountain Home, because it's only a few miles, you know, west of Harrison, and that's a legitimate thing that people face nowadays. So that's one of the first things I think about when I contemplate on everything that's going on right now. I was like, dude, that was a real scenario in which we were on the same bus, but we weren't in the same playing field. You know, I didn't have to think about any of that. And it came close to home. And Pookie, I agree with you. This one hits different, and this does feel like a revolution. I'm ready to use terminology that hyperbolic as well. This one just feels different. So
it's crazy to me to think, a couple months ago we were talking about the coronavirus, and we're talking about
you're right.
Yeah, when you're talking, and I'm talking, I nanny some kids, and I'm talking about to these kids, and when you guys go to high school, they're like fourth and second graders. When you guys get to high school, you're going to learn about the coronavirus. You're going to learn about how it affected the United States, whatever like that. Well, now they're going to be learning about this, just like how we learned about MLK and Malcolm X and everything in school. This is a similar, kind of, I guess, protest and riots and stuff that they were doing, not more than 40 years ago, or I guess now it's 60 years ago almost. But not that long ago. So it's crazy to think that we're living in history that's going to go into textbooks, and kids are going to be learning about this for the next, however many years. But it's a real thing, and it's definitely something that I think everyone needs to speak on, not just certain people. I think it's an everybody type of conversation.
For sure. It is weird because this virus was the first time I told my dad one day, I'm like, this is the first time where I feel like I'm actually living in history. This is a moment that we will remember forever. And unfortunately, we're not done yet. Not with this virus. I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm familiar with many of the mechanisms in place and how the virus works and all that, but not public health. But it's just, this story is not over yet, unfortunately. And, I'm glad there's peaceful protests going on out there, that people are gathering together and expressing themselves. But this is not helping, dude. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just asking, be as safe as you can, because, dude, we are on the tip of the iceberg here. But it is, dude, we're living in a history book. And the only other two times that I can think about that is when those motherfucking 6-time Super Bowl champion Patriots did 28-3, and when those motherfucking 6-time Super Bowl champions had to go through a heinous ordeal being accused of deflating